There you go. You're on the stage.
Alrighty, welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and Chaos Space Marine bikers to that 6+++ show. I'm your host, Tom, and this is a little emergency episode, a little bit of a supply drop, because we have had some points land. We have had a data slate. So we're going to rattle through it and give you some hot takes. It is quite late in the UK, and it's been quite a busy day, so we're not going to be going crazy in depth on this, but we are going to try and give you the sort of hot takes on the factions and on a data slate that I think is in a very solid place. I'm joined tonight by the lovely Scrivo. Say hello, Scrivo.
Hello, Scrivo.
Wonderful. And the lovely Jack. Say hello, Jack.
Hello, Jack.
Wonderful. Okay, the boys are on point. They are going to give you their perspectives as well. But what I'm going to do before we scroll down is just ask both of you fellas for a sort of out of 10 rating for the slate and a general take on how you feel this one is and what the impact is. I'll start with you, Jack. What do you reckon?
Probably like a 5.5.
Okay. 5.5 seems reasonable. Yep.
Yeah, I'm always more of a fan of big changes rather than small ones.
Yep.
So I'm never happy when it comes to just these point changes.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, it's all right. You hit a bunch of stuff that you need to hit. They missed a lot of stuff that they think they should have hit.
Yeah.
So it's all right.
Cool. Very nice. And you, Scriv, what do you think?
I'm probably closer to sort of 7.5.
Yeah, I feel 7-ish about it. Yep.
To me, a lot of the time when they do big changes and then it's both ways, so like you'll get a massive points hike on the stuff that's a problem, and then they'll bring down stuff that's just not being seen.
Yes. Yeah.
In the same faction, it often feels like they're kind of swinging it where it seesaws a little bit too much on some of the stuff. I'm kind of glad they're maybe doing this as a two-touch process, just to maybe see how it settles, like not touching spoilers, things like, say, a unit like Wraiths, but then dealing with the characters that are attached to it feels like trying not to just dunk an entire faction or detachment into the sea, which I prefer personally, but yeah.
It's not quite as exciting or as glamorous, is it? But I think it does important work. And we know, you guys will all know listening, we've had a sort of statistically quite healthy meta this time. It doesn't need massive emergency surgery. It does mean the slate's not quite as exciting, and it also makes it much easier to feed back on because there's not as much of an earth-shaking set of changes. I'm probably 7-ish as well with it. I think I like what it's doing in the places that it's doing it. I don't feel like this has accidentally created massive new problems for the game. In that sense, there's not like a sort of new disaster army coming out of this. There's maybe a couple of armies that are in a stronger spot, and a few of the sort of higher flying armies in the games definitely haven't been sort of seriously hurt, but I think it's done a lot of the things I'd have liked it to do. And as you say, Scrib, I think it'll be interesting to see if we get more substantive rules changes in the future, and indeed there wasn't indicators to suggest we would get that in a couple of places, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's generally very positive.
Ultimately, with 3 codex coming out in the next 2 weeks, the meta's going to get switched up anyway.
That's it. So that's the biggest change, isn't it? It's like the books are kind of, I'm absolutely factoring in the books as well, and I think that's definitely interesting. If you are in the chat, and it's interesting to see there are people in the chat, go to bed. Don't you have work tomorrow? What are you doing? Crazy people. I love that you're here. Really nice to have you here. Welcome, Brain Seller. Welcome, Entropic Tyranny. If you are in the chat, do shout us out. Let us know what you think. I'm very curious to get your takes. Obviously, do remember to hit like and subscribe. We're on a like and subscribe quest lately because we're getting a lot of likes and subscribes, and we want even more. We're greedy for more. Do remember that if you want to support us in the work we're doing, you can also become a member on the YouTubies. That would be really lovely as well if you want to do that. So who's in the chat? Oh, Edward 6++ is in the chat. He's painting orcs. Yes, he is. He is painting an army. And also he's retired from 40k anyway, so he's not going to be trying to give you his confused takes about what dragon you should take. He's not going to be any use in that sense. What spell lore you want to tech into. Jeremy says hi. Welcome, Jeremy. Christopher Richardson says well up for this nice little surprise slate show. Yes, Christopher, that's what we like to hear. Brain Seller asks, are the points changes going to be enough to give Tyranids the life they deserve in the meta? Entropic Tyranny, my favourite name, says absolutely not, Brain Seller. I mean, yeah, that's interesting. I played against Nids today, and I played against a Nid list I definitely thought was very good. So I think Nids have some game, but I don't think this massively changes what Nids do, does it? I think that's an absolutely fair. And Edward recommends elementalism. So if you want to tech into spell laws, elementalism is the one. And Entropic Tyranny is building a Lictor. And spoilers, Lictor stonks. Definitely very reasonable place. All right then, John. So we've got a lovely PDF up because we are seasoned professionals. Look at that lovely PDF. It is so PD and F. And we're going to scroll down it and give you a little bit of a once-over on the factions. So first up, we have the Adeptus Sororitas. what you're seeing here is some little rises on Archoflagellants, Crusaders, Triumph of St. Catherine, and Death Cult Assassins. So the very cheapest aspects of the MSU get a bump. Archos, which as we know are very durable, get a bump. And the Triumph, which is definitely a staple in a lot of this, get a bump. Blade of St. Eleanor, which seems to be just a must-take upgrade on a Canoness, I think, has also got a bump. And then you've got some little drops for Sacrosancts, the little shield ladies, Demonifuge, Penitent Engines, and Mortifiers. What do we make of this, boys?
I think it's probably not far enough on Archoflagellants. I think if you're already running 30, you probably still run 30 and
I agree.
30-point hit. Mm-hmm. So for me, that's not far enough. I would have liked to see probably 15 points for that unit, maybe even 20. As I say, I'm more of a favour of big swing, so take my bias into account there.
Yeah,
I like the change to Sacrosancts. They're a cool unit. We don't see them enough. They're just
for sure.
And then Crusaders, I think, warranted a change. 25 points for a 4+ invul unit, regardless of how good it is doing anything other than actions is crazy good. Completely. And I think the Mortifiers and Penitent Engines are units that are it's encouraging build diversity, trying to mess with that internal balance.
Yes.
So it's the right direction. Again, I don't know if that's the right. I mean, you can't really go much more than Mortifier, right? They're only 60 points, but it's, they're all right.
I think that's right. What about you, Scoop?
I really like that the Crusaders and the Death Cult Assassins have been hit on just the 2-person units. Because it means that you're discouraged from just taking the cheap little chaff, but then it's also not punishing people if they want to take bigger units, which often then just dunked a unit from ever existing in anything other than the MSU. So I like that. I think it's a smart approach.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for Sisters, it's Sisters we know are quite strong, and I don't think this particularly alters their strength. And I think the fact that a few other armies are altering means that Sisters come out of this in a really nice spot. I think they'll still be a very, very powerful faction in the right hands. Christopher Richardson says, "Explain to my girlfriend how I'm excited to see 3 men go through a PDF rather than go to bed right now." That's the kind of person we need. That's the kind of support we want, Christopher Richardson. So keep on watching us talk about PDF. And Swissy's in the chat. Swissy, you can hop on if you want, mate. Don't hold back. Get involved. Right, okay, let's go down to the next one, John.
Cool.
Oh, it's Custodes. Look, some stuff got cheaper. Bunch of stuff got cheaper. Mostly the infantry. Brainslayers was right. Castigator is not getting hit at all. That is interesting because that's a very consistent 3 in a list at the moment. So it's interesting to see a sort of auto take tank not get any touch at all. People talk about AP, but it's a wonderful tank into anything that isn't very armoured. So Custodes, I mean, what do we think here, boys?
Go ahead, Scribble. I went first and last one.
So the book lands this weekend, so there's probably not that much data. So this is, I think, from what they said in the actual article, that this and the Orks are actually just essentially their book points. So this takes into effect how they think they should land with the book power.
Yeah.
I think a lot of this is going to shift because the book obviously doesn't have quite as much killing power and kind of the fight first element that everyone's been kind of reliant on. So a lot of these units I think might get tweaked, but it all going down seems positive because it did still feel like it wasn't quite enough beef to it.
Yeah, Jeremy in chat is reminding us that this is green relative to codex values, and indeed Orc is the same for this. There are a lot of people shouting about Orcs getting cheaper, but actually most of those units are the same price as they are now. It's just relative to the book points as we've seen them. And what do you reckon, Jack?
I mean, sucks to be Custody players, right?
It does.
They're a victim at the minute of one of the sort of balancing issues the 40k has, in that you can't just make things cheaper until they're good, because you end up with situations where Custodes little Hagguard army, which is just with the many bodies on the board, it just doesn't work. You can make the Venerable Contemptor Dreadnought, I don't know, 60 points. Like 100 points. No, actually, 100 points. There's a good chance people still don't take it because you only have 2,000 points in your list. You have to. Would you spend points of your list on units that do not have guns or data sheet abilities that impact your game?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't really think this is going to change anything. They're still going to be not great.
And I just don't think there's the excitement is there in the buzz around Custodes. So I think outside of some faction specialists, I don't think we're likely to see a ton out of this book in the short term.
All the innovations likely,
and certainly this doesn't make it. Yeah, this doesn't look appealing enough to draw people out, I wouldn't think. Okay, wonderful. Let's move it along.
Cool.
Here we go. Ad mech. So you've got some drops. Call got a bit cheaper. Rust Stalker's down. Rangers down. Scorpius Disintegrated down. The Scatros goes down.
Cataphren Destroyers was the
Cataphren Destroyers, yeah. So Breaches are the most touted Cataphrons at the moment, aren't they? But Destroyers go down. The Dune Crawler. There's always a point at which the Dune Crawler reaches enough sort of price point that you actually have people using them as like the big backfield blocker and shooter. Whether this does it, I don't know. Castling Robots go down as well. So I think someone in the chat, it was probably you actually, Jack, said, this is all the right things, isn't it? This is what we would like to see hit, but what does it actually do we think?
Yeah. I think, I mean, we were talking the other day, we'd like to see the vehicles go down. We'd like to see the robots go down, which they have. Robots going down 10 points a model is the right thing. That's what you want. Is that enough of a swing? I don't know. But again, at the same point, it's the exact same issue as the Custodes have. The datasheet abilities just are not good. The guns are, in a lot of situations, not good. I think that's where the Onager Dune Crawler kind of falls apart. And what's the other vehicle called? Scorpius Disintegrator. That's it.
Yeah.
There's no reason to take a Scorpius Disintegrator when you have the Rust. Is it? Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember all the names for the dragoons. the chicken walkers.
Yeah, the chickens.
There's a chicken walker unit that's like, what's it, 10 points more, and you can have it's like 2 shots, or you can have 6 shots that are twin linked that are essentially the same profile. For like 10 points different. It's so there is a balance situation, which is just datasheet rules, datasheet abilities just aren't quite up to snuff. And there's only so much you can do with points. And I think this is going to be a good demonstration of, you can do big swings like Belisarius Call 30 points, like Castellan Robots 10 points a model. And is that going to change anything? Probably not, in my opinion.
It probably doesn't, because the Castellan Robots don't get a lot of the faction abilities unless they're in one of the detachments. So they've said in the article that they've started testing some actual other fixes for them. So I think this is step 1, and then they'll start looking at actual detachment things, because some of the synergies aren't there really, unfortunately. So
that's it. It's a bit clunky and honest, isn't it? Really.
Yeah.
What's the detachment called? Is it Cybernetica Data Host or something?
That's the vehicles one, right?
Yeah, the vehicle and robot one. There might be a build there for that now, because it's an okay detachment. The abilities you get out of it are good. It's just the quality of life usability aspect of it is kind of rough. So there might be a build there now. But again, there's so few AdMech players out there that innovation is hard to come by. So
yeah, that's the thing. And it's hard to really know how good AdMech is, because there's not been many people playing it. It's one where it's been entirely okay, just not very exciting. And again, there's just not that buzz and noise around it. I don't know that we're looking at drops here that are radical enough to draw people into it, but it'll be interesting to see if anyone does start putting these different bits together. And it's certainly nice to see some of the more sort of classic units getting some drops. Okay. Index Aeldari. So Aeldari get the giveth with one hand, taketh with the other. You see Shining Spears are cheaper if you like enormous mounted bases. Storm Guardians, Scorpions, Guardian Defenders, Howling Banshees go down, so more in the sort of range of utility and melee stuff getting cheaper. We see another rise on the D-cannons, which have been rising for the entire edition. We see Swooping Hawks getting a little catch, which they didn't get before. We see Fugan getting a little catch, which didn't get before, and I think Shadow Spectres also get a tap.
They are
as well. What do we reckon, John?
So
also the get back up again gem that goes.
Yeah, the Phoenix gem. What I think is quite interesting is this. I think is the first data slate we've had where points have changed on Forge Rod stuff for a while. It feels a bit more unusual that they're actually hitting them, because they tend to be left alone. So I think that's nice that they're at least acknowledging that they can be an issue. Like the Shadow Spectres, you're just seeing lots of them, right? So it's nice that that's been dealt with. Things like Fuegan, I still think you're going to see him, but then it's just taking away perhaps a chunk of a unit that would be the points would have been. But things like Swooping Hawks, they're still cheap. 80 points for 5 of them. You're still going to see bricks of them just floating around doing their pesky job, right? So I think it's still just going to be the MSU build, which, just maybe one less unit, perhaps.
What do you reckon? Jack?
I think Aeldari are still the favoured son. But joking aside, I think this is actually some of these factions I think I'm like, this is perfect. This is exactly the right direction I want to go, and this is not that. So the nerfs are good, right? So Fugan support weapons, Super Hawks nerfs, they're fine, right? Are 5 points on Super Hawks going to make a difference? Probably not. You probably want to see like 10 or 15. But it's good. Those are good. What I don't like is that we've got buffs to striking scorpions, shining spears, howling banshees, units like that, because those units aren't bad. They're just outshined by other units in the index. Because some of because almost all the Aeldari data sheets are absolutely cracked, and any other index would kill for them.
Oh yeah.
So the problem is they're not bad, right? Striking Scorpions are a really good unit. Howling Banshees are a good unit. It's
Tyrandus is also very good, so he gets more appealing now if you can have him cheap.
Yeah, they're just outshined by other units in the index. So making them cheaper, that just, they don't need it, I guess is the point. And it's just since Aeldari is such a high win rate faction as it is, like relative to the 26 factions that we look at. It seems kind of crazy that some of these units would get buffs when there's other factions in here that are just like haven't changed, and they're really languishing. So to me, it's quite frustrating that Aeldari would get essentially preferential treatment unnecessarily. And no War Spider changes. What the fuck is going on there? Please, please nerf the War Spiders, please. But sorry.
I think that's very reasonable. I think you can see that they are trying to push Aeldari players towards some of the more interactive stuff, actual combat stuff that's actually going to come in and hit. And the list that gets hit the worst is just the "you can't see me and I shoot you to death" list, which does suck to play against and is the most unfun expression, I think, of the index at the moment. But as you say, the units they buffed are already solid, except perhaps Shining Spears. I don't really know where they fit into the picture, but certainly Scorpions at 65. That's like a basic skirmishing unit. Although actually they gave little drops on a lot of the sort of forward deploy utility skirmishing units, and that is there's definitely something there with Scorpions now.
I can't believe
want to
how
go
good
into
they
a more
are.
combat centric Aeldari build.
So
in terms, it actually does. It might actually breathe a little bit more life into different kinds of Eldar build, and I think a lot of people will have their opinion on whether or not that's something Eldar need or deserve at this stage after the run they've had.
Crew are 55.
So Scouts are 65. And similar sort of role.
That is absolutely insane that they're pointing to that level. Just basic stuff like their weapon profiles and the fact they have a 3-up armor and infiltrate. Like that's just absolutely mad. I can't. As someone who's still relatively new to 40k compared to you guys, it still blows my mind that Aeldari they just keep getting away with it.
I think it's the points they do. Relating to the rest of the index, perhaps. Trying to compare them,
I think
never works.
The good news on it as well is just that I don't think this helps Aeldari into their worst matchups, and I think their worst matchups are all still very game relevant right now. I mean, only Guard is taking anything like a knock that actually troubles Aeldari, I would say. So I think Necrons and Grey Knights in particular still being very relevant means that they're not going to be the top tables for everyone menace, but this definitely does rejuvenate them in some ways. Hello, Nurgle Matthew, lovely to have you in the chat as well. And Brain Cellar says, glad to see Howling Banshees get some love. Nice new sculpts. Yeah, our own Rob Kimpton's been painting some, so maybe he was in the know. Maybe he had a whisper somewhere.
And those new Scorpion models.
Yes, Index Agents of the Imperium. We have a little rise on the Calidus. We have a little rise on Draxus. We have a little rise on the baby squad of Inquisitorial Henchmen. What do we reckon, boys?
You'll still see Calidus in most Imperial lists.
I mean, it's just still so useful.
There isn't something else you can go, I'll replace it with that. Like, a unit of Scouts doesn't do the same job, so yeah.
There's a lot of Imperial factions now where they alternative low-not options, like the Scatros, is like actually a viable choice because it's like 60 points compared to this 100. So that's fine. I like that it goes up. It just taxes all the lists that take it. That's fine. And then Draxus is just like, because I don't know, fuck Custodes again, I guess.
Draxus is pretty wild. So it's fair enough.
They haven't suffered enough.
No, exactly. Cool. And so, I mean, we only know there's only one pure agents player in the world, as far as I know, Sai, and I'm sure he can recover.
He's
from
probably
these
crying right now.
Right, this is a juicy one. Juicy one, Astra Militarum. So, I mean, you could, if you were to write down on a piece of paper before this the units that would take taps, I think you'd have guessed it almost 100% accurately. It's Rises on Kazakin, Basilisk, Bulgrin, Manticore. I think that's your lot.
And then the Medusa Carriage Battery.
Oh, and the Medusa Carriage Battery, which is very dangerous, especially if you get its profiles wrong.
Well,
And then, so Basilisk went up. And I think that's interesting, the Basilisk becoming expensive as well, because it's although its output isn't as crazy, it is still very popular. And then you've got drops on Rough Riders. 60 for 5 on Rough Riders is appealing to me. Hellhounds, Hydras go down. All of the frontline straight shooting Leman Russ tanks go down, not the commanders. Scions go down, and the Scions command squad goes down. What do you think of this, Jack?
I see where I don't like Aeldari, I like this for the opposite reason. So this is hit the units that everyone takes. Pretty much all the units that everyone takes, including a very hefty nerf to Kazakin, 20%, which I think is the right number.
Very heavy. I think that's fair. Yeah,
I think that's basically dead on, because generally you ask the guard players what do they think, and they'll say 10 to 15. So you add 5 on whatever the players of the faction say, and then that's probably the right number. I think that's pretty much dead on 120. I think you still take a unit or two because they're really strong still. Just what their datasheet ability does, I think that's quite good. And then the Basilisk, again, low damage output in the Manticore, but when you combine it with Fields of Fire, it is very dangerous. So that's, again, very good. Bulgrin squads, 10 points per 3 is, that's not a lot, really. But, when you're having, 6 times 3, then that adds up quite quickly. So that's all good. And then the buffs that they've done are, all the Leman Russ variants went down 10, Tempestus 10, Hydra, the Hellhound, Itinerant Horizon, all down 10. That's good, because these units aren't bad. They're not bad at all. They're just aggressively fine, and you just had a better use of your points. Those are the perfect units to put down, because then they justify their existence at that point, and you want to try them. Because they, with other stuff going up and then them coming down, you don't, it's worth your points to have them in, because Hellhounds have good datasheet abilities, good weapon profiles. It's just they were outshined by other stuff, but now you'd want to take them. Same goes for the Rough Riders. They were just outshined by the Bulgrin squad, but now they're definitely
Rough Riders are a lovely little glass cannon countercharge unit, and I would really like to see MSU squads of those making it into Guardless. I think they feel way more dynamic for having them in it. And as you say, it just all of the options that got buffs are more honest. It's more like, I'm going to come and hit you, or I'm going to come and shoot you in sight, or deep striking in with the Scions, which is obviously a very nice feature of guard play. So this feels good. I think this feels like an encouragement to pivot away from just the indirect car part, and we'll see whether it proves appealing enough. Index Black Templars. So all those Black Templars, Reaper and Lancer and Valiant, all the tanks get a little bump. Impulsor gets a little bump. And then Crusaders get a little bump. And Sword Brothers get a little bump as well. Yeah. What do we make of this, John?
So it's 10 points for a multi-melter on each of the transports, which makes sense, because them being 5 points different or the same points was absolutely bonkers. The Crusader squads make sense as well, because we were seeing, because their battle line in the community, I think their battle line, we were often seeing 4 units of these MSU, where it's a melter gun and a multi-melter, and it was way too cheap for what you were actually getting. So it makes sense. This is dealing with the Black Templar, or trying to at least deal with the Black Templar Ironstorm lists, which I don't think it's probably enough, but at least it's a deterrent, and you're going to then lose probably a scoring unit, a cheap thing that now makes it slightly more fragile, which helps.
Yeah. I don't think it radically changes the power level, does it? What do you think, Jack?
I think all of it comes together to basically cost you. You basically have to take one unit out of your list, which kind of stretches the Ironstorm list at very thin, which I think is a good, because I don't think you're not going to take these units. So I think all the Black Templar Ironstorm lists are going to get hit by this change.
Yeah, for sure.
They may pivot into something like Vindicators, and it may just still continue to be a problem. But Yeah, I think this is a good change. This is an example of positive.
And the Calidus was often in those lists as well, so
yeah, that's true.
Sprinkles,
That's true.
So that's another 20 points straight off the bat as well. So
it is just nibbling away.
No,
yeah. Okay, very nice. Let's keep it moving.
There we go. Oh,
Blood Angels. Oh dear. So this was the pre-Dataslate sleeper hit that everyone was already talking about. And I think one thing I do like with the way Dataslates have worked for probably the last 6 months is that they always have an eye on what could be next, and they do always do something. Now, I don't think this is radical change, but what you've got is, again, some internal balancing. So little drops on Death Company Intercessors, Death Company Dreadnought, Sanguinary Guard, which was very needed, and Mephiston. Then rises on Death Company Marines, Death Company Jump Packs, Lamatis, Sanguinary Priest, and the Sanguinary Priest with Jump Pack. What do we make of this, John, as a BA player?
So, Death Company, it's 10, so 20 points for 10 models. Mm-hmm. It just, again, squeezes a little bit of the value, and things like the Sanguinary Priest with Jump Pack, slapping that onto things like Vanguard, vets with shields, was a real problem unit that you just couldn't chew through, so making them just a little bit more expensive, it just, again, kind of strips out some of the kind of the wiggle room that you're going to end up losing something, which is nice because then you have to make those decisions on, is it worth doing them? And then maybe even looking if Sangard can do the similar job. I think the answer is still no, because I don't think the data sheet is as exciting to people as Death Company, because they're still re-rolling to hit, which is just bananas. But it's giving a suggestion of things like Mephiston going down, I think can work, but I still think there is.
Yeah, he's quite nice with Assault Intercessors, isn't he, Mephiston?
Yeah, he does something. So
it's got that thing where they want to internally balance, but ultimately the all-in super hard-hitting Death Company build is still probably the one that you want, and I don't think these changes necessarily adjust for that. What do you think, Jack? Anything?
I think it's the same thing again, really. You're not going to not take these Death Company units if you have Blood Angels. They just do something that nothing else does.
Exactly.
So it just kind of squeezes the efficiency of the army, makes it so you have one less unit. You can't just be everywhere and do everything. So I think it's the right kind of hit. We like to see it.
Yeah, completely. Definitely just good that they've got their eye on that. Okay, Chaos Demons. Perfectly balanced, as all things should be. Demons do not change. I think it's healthy to have a few armies that are in a reasonable spot, just left exactly as is. It doesn't feel good for the players. It's not fun for a player to have no changes at all. But Demons are certainly one of a number, and so are Chaos Knights, where again they're performing pretty consistently. There's no need for radical shake-up. On the other hand, we have Chaos Space Marines. Rejoice, Chaos Space Marines players. It is buffs only for you guys this time around. Now, they haven't given you all the good toys back, but they have given you a bunch of drops. John, that's too small for me to read, my man. Do you mind if we zoom in a little bit?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So, Chaos Bikers down, Chaos Terminators down, Havoc's down, Hellbrute down. Chaos Hellbrute is quite a spicy unit as well. Both the Demon Prince is down, the Mauler Fiend down, Possessed down. The output on Possessed is insane. Raptors down, Venom Crawler down, Legionaries down, Cultist Mobs down, and the Vindicator. So, basically, a lot of the stuff that was not the Chaos Space Marine meta that has been being explored with by such CSM players as do still exist recently. What do we reckon, Jack?
Yeah, it's hard to say for Chaos Space Marines, right? Because they still don't have much in the way of like innovation going on, because a lot of their player base dried up. So it is hard to tell. That being said, a lot of these units, like a lot of stuff has changed, right? When I have played against Chaos Space Marines, I thought, wow, there was just nothing on this board. So to see like a lot of stuff go down, that is good. Things like Chaos Bikers, we were seeing a little bits here and there. You know, Vindicators, we were seeing here and there. The Hellbrute was making an appearance. These are all units that Chaos players wanted to take anyway. So just giving them more points, and then that can probably like add in, that can work out to another unit, and then so on and so forth. You know, that just gives them more stuff on their more board, and they can do more, get more points. I've just sent you a list of point changes as well, Tom, just for your reference. It makes it a bit easier for you.
Oh, very nice. And so for the I think obviously there's a few output units targeted here, but the overwhelming focus is on a lot of the utility, right, and the smaller things like Bikers and Raptors and Legionaries that are just job doers and little mission players. I think CSM struggle with that a bit at the moment, so I think that's very positive. 75 uppy downy Bikers with quite reasonable shooting once you factor in packs is pretty good. Like that's pretty good. It's a bit, the Pioneers for the Votann cost 90. They're a little bit better, obviously, but these are cheap and very good. And I do wonder with I think the 10 Terminator Brick in CSM is a very fun way to play, and that getting cheaper certainly has me interested. As someone who dabbles in the CSM, the 10 Termies being able to bowl down the middle feels good. Feels like a nice position for them to be in.
Bonkers.
Yeah, be interesting to see. Lee Church will be happy. Right then, Dark Angels, Deathwing Knights down, Deathwing Terminators down, Inner Circle Companions down. The Lion is down to 300. What do you reckon,
50
John?
points, which is the biggest single change.
It's a big drop, isn't it? It is a big drop.
Yeah. So the Terminators, it's a thing that we've seen across all of the Space Marines, that all of the Terminators have dropped down, because I think they've noticed that for their efficiency, you don't actually get them on the table, because there's always something better that can do a similar sort of role. The Deathwing Knights coming down is nice, because as I've been experimenting with, they are quite handy as a little 5-man bully pack that goes and is a pain in the arse, led by character, and it justifies you having that expense, because when it was kind of getting to the sort of 400 points for them and a character, it was a bit kind of questionable. Inner Circle Companions now makes them slightly a discussion point for people, because when they were more expensive than Blade Guard, but were on paper were worse for what they could do, it felt a shame. I've been trying them out. I think there's some play there. I think it'll be interesting to see if people do dabble with them. But I'm not sure the Lion will see competitive tables still. It'll be people taking him for the sake of it. He's just still a lot of points for what he can achieve, which it's a shame, but...
Yeah, I think we're just sat in that place with Dark Angels. There's a few we mentioned where it's just, I think the excitement and the buzz isn't there. Maybe someone will find something that we've not seen. But I think if you look at these units, and if you're building a Dark Angels list leaning heavily on these, the output and the sort of the power there just isn't there compared to some of the other options in the Marine world at the moment, and that's probably why they will struggle to see use. But it'd be interesting to see if the Lion can get in. Now he's a lot cheaper. It is a big drop.
I think it's just enough to encourage long-time Dark Angels players.
That's exactly it
with the faction again.
I think that's
what it needs.
It's just like go back, try the fun theme stuff, see if it helps. Now it's a bit cheaper. Death Guard, no change for Death Guard with one exception. It's the Death Guard Hellbrute who gets a little drop. The Death Guard Hellbrute, when he hits something, it gives it count as within contagion range, which isn't nothing. But yeah,
so weird. Like, how do they just decide like that's the one unit that
they've done all Hellbrutes? So I think
Hellbrutes in general
as a suite. Right, same with Terminators for loyalists.
They really haven't seen much use. So the CSM one is genuinely good, right? Because it gives you like a pacting on 5s or something like that. So the CSM one actually might be legit in a shooting list, but the Hellbrute one, I'm not sure. Death Guard generally staying the same, I think.
I would like to see a couple of these units change, like the Blight Lord Terminators, some of the
Blight Lords, I agree. That's the one. Blight Lords, it would have been nice to see some change.
Yeah.
Maybe the Mephitic Blight Hauler down as well, the little melter tank, but that doesn't really get in at the moment.
They're perfect.
Float drones seem to be pushed. Then we have Index Deathwatch, and if you want some indication that they're just not trucking with Deathwatch at all right now, and that perhaps they are not too far away for drastic changes to how the army functions, as may have been rumoured, I think this is it. They're not even trying, not even attempting, not even trying. Like this is a dreadful army in statistical terms, so it is baffling to see no effort to touch it, which can only, to me, say that new things are coming down the line.
We shall see.
Yeah. Right, Drukhari.
Perfect.
It's perfect. Spot on. All the data for Drukhari says bang average, 50%. And
I
think they're in an interesting spot where it's like, it wouldn't make any sense to buff any of the units people like myself are running in Sky Splinter, because they all work, they're all great, they do their job just fine. And at the same time, if you wanted to be like, we'll drop Grotesque or drop Hellions or whatever, make them a bit cheaper, ultimately they're not taken as much because they just don't work with the detachment particularly well as they are for their points. So I just think Drukhari are in that place where they've got one thing they do well, and I think it's fine leaving it as is, and they probably benefit from a few changes around them like Guard and Aeldari and things like that. Oh, it's your upcoming new army, isn't it, Jack? Oh, sorry, Jack.
I was just going to say one last thing about Drukhari.
Yeah.
Kind of surprised to see no change to the Scourges, just because they're in like every single list.
Yeah.
And Aeldari do make quite a good use of them as well.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised not to see like a 5-point bump on them.
Yeah, they've never changed either. They've stayed at 110 the whole time.
Yeah, and I would like to see a change to the planes, but they don't like planes. So.
Yeah. I think Scourges are still 5 wounds, right? But they're not quite as flexible as the Aeldari ones and the bullshit they can pull. But yeah, you're right. They are a mainstay.
Yeah,
So
5 points.
It's surprising. It's surprising not to see more of a rise. Okay, very, very nice. So, Genestealer cults, we have a little drop, tiny drop on Aberrants, then Achilles Ridge Runners, Rock Grinders, and Goliath Trucks go down. What do we make of this, Jack, as a GSC aspirant?
Actually, really interesting. Achilles Ridge Runners are like on the very cusp of being like units that you want to run a lot of, because D3 shot las cannons with blast are hilarious.
They are. They really are.
They're randomly hit on 3s.
Yeah.
The Rock Grind and the Truck have gone down 25 and 20 respectively, which is a considerable change. Like 90 points for a truck is something you'd actually look at, I think. The biggest issue they have is they don't really synergize with the detached room rules at all.
That's exactly it, yeah.
But, I could see running, 10 either aberrants or just regular neophytes in a truck, and then, you could put the character with the reactive move in there.
Yeah.
Prowling Adjutant. So, you can get out, shoot, and then if anyone comes near you can get back in the transport with it.
Oh, that's quite fun. That's a nice combo.
Sounds like Sky Splinter.
Yeah, you can. So there's tricks you can do there. Like taking 1 or 2 is probably going to be something that you don't feel bad about anymore. Before, when you did it, it was like, wow, I'm spending a lot of points on this. It was very much a premium for getting
the points on both were just insane. Like I couldn't square the logic at any stage. Like the Rock Grinder, I think is still in a place where it just dies so easily that I just don't think 130 points is worth it. And as you say, it doesn't synergize with the detachment. But certainly, truck staging little MSU units out of it feels very doable now.
I think you can run a Rock Grinder as like a rapid ingress deck with 5
things.
Yeah.
That's about it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I think it's going to be. You're probably going to see this with like 1 or 2 trucks in it.
Yeah,
now.
Exactly. And it's just freeing up a few points here and there, which doesn't do GSC any harm. Interesting that they're getting some taps, and they've got a book imminent, and Deathwatch have just been left in the dust. So we have Grey Knights now. So small rises on the Libby, the Tech Marine, and the Dread Knight, not the Grandmaster variant, the standard Dread Knight. Then a bunch of drops on basically the Lemons with 2 wounds and basic armor, the Interceptors, the Purgation Squads, Purifiers, and Strikes. Interesting, isn't it? What do you think, John?
So to me, my gut feeling straight away was that they're trying to encourage people to justify taking something outside of kind of the builds we've been seeing. But I still think you're going to see Dread Knights. You maybe not see the full kind of spam of them.
Yep.
And like the Librarian, that's the guys that were they're just shitting mortal wounds at people.
It's
right?
the little mortal wound guys.
So it's just that makes that then kind of look like you might not get as many because you were getting people often taking 3. Yep. So that and the Tech Marine was coming up quite a lot recently.
Yes.
I don't think it's enough to encourage the diversity in the units because they've got such different data sheets. I'm not so certain we'll see too much of a change, but it's nice that you could just kind of swap them in. But the strikes, people are taking strikes anyway, and then
strikes for sticky make it in. Yep.
It just feels like that's what you're going to go with. Like sticky when you're booping up and down makes more sense than having some really good flamers to me.
What do you think, Jack?
I think it's not going to change the people who are taking loads of Nemesis Dread Knights, Librarians, and Tech Marines. I don't think it's going to change their list, which basically means their list just gets less stuff in it, which I think is a good direction to have. Those lists being slightly worse overall, rather than the individual units not being taken anymore, which I think is fine. Sure. And then I think these aggressively average units like the Bagation Squad, Purifier, and the Strikes are getting cheaper, are enough to be like, okay, well, maybe we'll try some of those, and that sort of encourages the internal balance. Because, again, Purgation, Inceptors, and Purifiers aren't bad units.
No, they're not. They're solid.
They're just outshined by other things. So, again, so reducing their price, like, maybe we'll run a couple of units of those, because it's an interesting breakpoint, right? Because Strike Squads used to be 125, but now Purifiers are 125. So if you're taking Strikes before, maybe you'll take Purifiers instead.
Yeah.
And that sort of encourages some switching up of things.
Yeah, completely. I think Grey Knights generally come out of this in a very good spot, though. I think it's a little nudge, but actually for the obvious power and success that the army's been enjoying, I think it's not been handled very heavily. I think that's absolutely fine. It's not an army that has a book on the horizon or anything. You do have to be careful with those. You don't want to write them off for months at a time when there's nothing logical coming up with them. But I think they come out of this looking pretty good, especially again as Manticores and things that kill Terminators taking a hit is a massive positive for them with the way they were playing with more Terminator heavy lists. Okay. Oh, good evening, Existence UK. Lovely to have you in here, and you, Jack Lentz. So, Imperial Knights, perfectly balanced. All the data points to it, actually. Yeah, the Knights are in a perfectly good spot. They're being handled very carefully. Maybe
Knights getting folded away as well.
Oh, that would be great, wouldn't it? We can only hope. Bung them all together, and demons and Drukhari in the same in the same way. Every army that didn't get touched just gets molded into one Imperial agent.
I mean, I won't say no to that.
Yeah, that would ruin my life, but that's okay. For the Leagues of Votann, we've got a little baby bump on the Hearthkin Warriors down to 100, so they're sort of competing with Berserks for the Sagittars spots, and then Uthar the Destined getting a little drop down to 80. Uthar doesn't see much use. He's actually a perfectly reasonable little character, but he doesn't see an awful lot of use.
Weird token changes.
It's minimal, isn't it? Yeah, it maybe gets you an extra enhancement in. It maybe nudges you back towards more Hearthkin Warriors and Sagittars. Votann again, solid, consistent, balanced spot. They're good at some things, they're bad at other things. I think this leaves them more or less exactly where they are. Existence UK says, just waiting till we get to Orks to see if someone was. Well, if anyone's going to, it's the lab with the green glowing background there. Necrons, we have taps a little rises on the Catan Nightbringer, takes up his rightful role as the most expensive Catan because he was the best. Deceiver stays exactly the same. Void Dragon goes up. The Monolith gets a little rise as well. Transcendent gets a rise. Chronomancer goes up. Plasmancer goes up. The Dimensional Overseer for Hypercrypt goes up. Technomancer goes up. Illuminor Seraz, very popular, goes up. Immortals go up as well. And then we've actually got some drops too here for Necrons. So Scorpex down, Scorpec Lord down, Flayed Ones down, Deathmarks down to a very, very aggressive 60 with the Flayed Ones for decent deep striking shooting units. Was there anything else? If you just scroll back up briefly, John, do you mind? Ophidians down as well. That's Uppy Downy, so cheap Uppy Downy's house, and the Catacomb Command Barge down. What do we think, Jack?
Really nice changes.
Yeah, I think
a
so.
Particular fan of the Technomancer change, 25 points per Technomancer.
It's big.
So that's 75 points straight away for the old Canoptech Court list. I'm really big fan of that. And all the Satans going up as well. Very nice for those triple Satan lists that can just get in the bin. Sick of that. But I'm really happy that these are not like 5-point changes, 10-point changes. There's a lot of 15, 20.
Yeah, there's quite substantive rises.
Yeah, very, very substantial changes. Really like to see that because that will actually like switch up some builds because their point changes enough where it's like, okay, I can't run 3 Technomancers because that's 75 extra points on my list. Like, you actually have to consider a build change, which is what you want to see from there. And then the units that again are aggressively average, your Scorpex, your what's the Catacomb Command Barge, and the Ophidians are just like, okay, well, maybe I'll take these now. So that's good to see. And then obviously you have your the units that are kind of like supposed to be the dedicated action-y doers, with your Flayed Ones and your Deathmarks, and they're now more encouraged to take.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I think that's a really good, really good balance change for the Necrons there.
I agree. I think it's just pushing you firmly away from just purely bodying someone on primary and trying to encourage you to take the finessey utility bits alongside, right? Which in combination means the list is just a little bit less obnoxious on the points, which I think is a good thing.
And it doesn't punish wraiths, which I think is the important thing, because they in themselves are the problem, but only when led. So it's nice that they're not dunking them away from being used. So it's more discouraging how they were used, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's very reasonable. I do think Necrons still remain very strong. I think Canoptech Court remains very strong. The Doomstalker didn't get a hit at all. Very nice unit specifically in there. And actually, if anything, it looks like possibly Hypercrypt is more impacted by this than Canoptech, which is interesting because Canoptech, I always find the slightly more joyless one to play, but that's a me thing. And so then we've got a few comments in the chat. Ashley Blake says, would have been nice for a small drop on Thunderkin. Thunderkin are very good already, Ashley. Drop my Berserks for Kin. No way. Yeah, I mean, I take 3 squads of Berserks and some Kin is what I'm thinking. And then he says, stuck in the middle with Votann. I'm afraid that is the life, Ashley. Enjoy it. And Intrepid Tyranny says, Catan should have been at least 300. Nah, I don't think so. I think Catan are in a nice spot with this. I think Catan are very solid, but again, we've already seen that some of the best Necron lists don't even use them.
I think the fact they're very slow kind of is the balancing factor there.
And can be gummed up, tied up, blocked, and yeah, they're okay. And Jack Len says, overall, I'm pretty happy with the changes. It won't fix everything, but everything seems to be getting nudged in the right direction. Yeah, I completely agree, Jack. I think my overall feeling with the new books landing is that they don't destroy the game. So that, coupled with keeping things on a par, is good news. It's not the most exciting, but we know exciting slates usually mean something awful's happened. So it's quite nice not to be trying to fix it. Right then, John, let's take it to an Orc place. You going to wire for us?
No.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank God. Idiots. Wow.
Shout out to Magoo at Hellstorm, who wired very aggressively for all 5 rounds and gave me serious anxiety. It was a good time.
He's definitely a knob.
He's a mega knob.
He is a mega knob. So for the Orcs, this is all. I think this is largely relative to the book points. I don't think this is any different to what they already were at for the index in the main.
Do you want me to read out the list of changes?
Yeah, if you want to nudge how it actually relates, that'd be great.
So the Beast Boss is down 20.
Okay, nice.
Beast Boss on Squigosaur is down 35.
Yep.
The Flash Skits are down 15.
Yep.
Mech Guns are down 5. Mozrog is down 30. The Knobs are down 5. And then the Big Mech is up 15. Big Mech in Mega Armor is up 15, sorry.
Yeah.
The Shock Jump Dragster is up 5. And Squig Hulk Boys are up 35.
Yeah.
Because
that's what's gaining a new model in the unit, yeah.
Yeah, so which makes sense to me, because like the Beast Boss and Mozrog are now unit, like they're leaders rather than monsters.
Plugins, aren't they? Yeah.
So it makes sense to me. And then, Flash Gates have lost the character. I can't remember his name.
They've lost Badrock. Yeah.
Badrock, yeah. So it makes sense they go down. And then, so the Beast Boss went down a lot because I guess no one takes him. But
they were crazy expensive as well, the Beast Bosses, for no obvious reason.
I think they were really useful.
They had a tap early on in the edition when they were being spammed with the Beast Snaggers, but they were never, for what they do, they were never that, they didn't deserve to be as expensive as they were.
I think all these changes make a lot of sense. I think it's a big, a lot. It's mostly just, the stuff that we have radically changed, like the way that they function from index to codex. They've changed the points on, and some
changes that were pre-codex that were in the last slate, like trucks.
The most impactful ones were the killer cans got cheaper last time. They're still very cheap and good in Dreadmob. Boys are cheap and good, and obviously have detachments that make them sing more now. Meganobs definitely still cheap. People will say a lot about Meganobs. I'm not panicking on Meganobs. I think they're okay. I don't think there is anything like as obnoxious.
I think this is largely we're going to leave it as it is and see how it lands situation.
Exactly.
How Games Workshop tends to run new codexes. It's just the stuff where we've changed what kind of unit this is. Yeah. That's what. And
Existence UK has got it in the chat. RIP Grot Tank. So Grot Tank's going is very big because it removes another one of the more accurate, consistent shooting units. And so Orcs in general, unless teching specifically into Dreadmob or Speedwar, have a real shooting problem, which means all of these durable Hordy builds that we're dealing with, generally, although they're scary, they have a lot of stuff. They can be durable in deceptive ways. They're also basically getting shot by a full strength enemy army for 5 turns. So that's the balance, right? That's how it kind of levels out.
Hopefully, save people a lot of money, because I don't even think that list was any good anyway.
Yeah, I agree. Dreadmob was always a meme, but now it's half the meme it used to be. Okay, let's go down.
Oh gosh.
What's next?
Okay. Space Marines.
My lord. So Space Marines. This actually wasn't anything like as ambitious as I thought it might be.
No.
Assault Intercessor with Jump Packs got a little down. Eliminator's got a little
5
up.
points.
Brutalis continues its quest to become the Take 3 Dreadnought, but I don't think it's there yet. It's at 160. Almost everything stays the same, including Gladiators. Gladiators all stay exactly the same. Hellblasters get a little drop, which is nice. Incursors get a little drop.
Yep.
And then anything else, John, or is that the...
then Terminators again.
Terminators and the Vindicator. Vindicators in general going down. And then you'll see a rise for the Storm Raven. Drops for the Tactical Squad and the Terminator Assault Squad. And then there was a couple of rises on the regularly taken enhancements in Iron Storm as well.
Yes.
What do we reckon?
Master of Machine War and Adeptus Omnissiah were out of the 3 you'd take, you'd normally see them. You'd see those 2.
Yep.
And Target Augury Web was already expensive, and and you still see it.
So if you're taking all 3 of those, you're looking at literally a full unit's points to run those enhancements now, which is interesting. What do you reckon, Jack?
It's the same thing again, right? Hitting the auto takes that remain auto takes is good because it just gives you less stuff to do in your lists. They're hitting the right things, I think, here in Space Marines. It's they don't want to, because Space Marines don't have a very good win rate. They don't want to like nerf them too much.
No,
but very specifically the stuff that is too good, like the Iron Storm. This hits Iron Storm Black Templars. It doesn't really hit Space Marines overall, which is very, very good.
Because if you'd hit the Gladiators in Space Marines Standard, you're not hitting Iron Storm. You're hitting all of the detachments. And
exactly.
They were
this is a very
unit you plug in.
Changes.
Yeah. Because if you take them out, then there's suddenly you might see people taking things like a Ballistus instead.
Yeah,
it just suffers, and then the win rate will go down. And they've obviously tried it. So
completely. Existence UK asks, is the Iron Storm Vindy as spicy as the CSM Vindy? I don't see why not. I think it would be able to access a lot of the same stuff. Maybe not quite as raw power, but it's definitely Vindicators are definitely creeping down because of the added durability on a Vindicator. It is creeping down to being quite interesting. Before we go on to the next one, just a reminder, thank you so much everybody for tuning in. It's amazing to have so many of you here. Please do hit like and subscribe on the video because that helps us in our quest to take over the entire world. And also leave us a comment. I'd be really interested to know how your army specifically has been affected. And a reminder, if you want to support us long term, you can sign up on YouTube to be a member as well. It's only a very small contribution, but obviously that helps our channel to grow, helps us to keep on producing this content for you. If you're interested in coaching or mentoring any of that good stuff, you can be a chapter master and you can work with Chris and myself on improving your game as well. We're having a lot of fun with our new cohort of mentees at the moment, so please do consider that if that's something you'd be interested in. Wonderful. That's plugs done. I'm trying to compete. Innis schooled me on self-promotion on the state of play, so I need to try and up my game. Danks Aboka says, I take it Davey's not here because he's crying into a pile of gargoyles. I keep telling Davey to take gargoyles, and he did have some in the last list draft he sent. Space Wolves get drops on the Wolfguard Terminators and Wolf Scouts. And otherwise, I think that's it, isn't it, John?
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
They're in a perfectly reasonable spot exploiting the Stormlance stuff, aren't they? But they're fine. They're not sort of tearing up the world, but they're absolutely fine.
Reasonable.
And Existence UK says, guess no Ed either, as he's still slap chopping up some orcs. Yeah, absolutely. Some of our team were less committed. Some of our team didn't want to start streaming at 10 o'clock on a school night. You're dealing with the Mavericks here. These are the people who will answer the call at the last minute. Okay, then we have Tau Empire. Jack, I'm going to let you take it away on this one.
We'll just wait for the codex, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's on pre-order Saturday, essentially, isn't it? So that it's
they'll release the
with
point.
it.
They'll release the points for it in like 2 weeks.
Ed says, I'm filming after this, thank you. That sounds like a you problem, Ed.
It's a me problem, actually.
All right, let's scroll down.
Thousand Suns.
Okay, right. So the headlines here are the 2 of the auto take enhancements went up 10 points each, Arcane Vortex, Law of Forbidden Law. And then it's drops other than that. So Cultist down, the Demon Prince is down, Hellbrute down, Maulafine down, Vindicator down, Scarab Occult Terminators get a little drop down as well. So this feels like a net win for Thousand Suns overall.
Massively so, yeah.
Yeah, it's a real advantage. The most potent build essentially does gain a tiny points rise because the Cultist drops don't quite outweigh the up on the enhancements. The one that's being played at the moment with mass rubrics and characters, but it is a surprise to see no aspects of that outside of the 2 enhancements take any kind of rise at all.
It's a weird one because they're probably the 3rd best army in the game, I would say. Yeah. So it's strange to see them get a bunch of... They've got a bunch of points decreases on units that people never took, and people will probably continue to never take.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is really weird. And then none of the characters have got hit. I think this would have been fine if you'd hit some of the characters, this kind of change. But just changing nothing else, it just makes the whole thing pointless, really.
Completely. It's definitely strange to see, an army that's got an identifiably potent build, the skew of which is well known, and none of it's getting hurt.
Because I think in main Chaos Space Marines, the Vindicator, Mauler Fiend, Hellbrute and Demon Princes all got changed, and the cultists all got changed.
Yeah.
So the only thing that's specific to Thousand Suns here that got changed is the Scarab Occult Terminators.
Yeah.
So I think this is more of there aren't actually any real changes. We're just matching what we did to Chaos Space Marines.
Yes, agreed.
Which is a bit weird to me. I would have, I think there's a hit to Vortex. Yeah, some of the enhancements. So there is a hit to some of the characters.
Yeah, it essentially pushes one unit out of the sort of go-to lists at the moment because it just makes it too hard to square the points.
Araman could have gone up 10. The Infernal Master could have gone up 10. Stuff like that, just to tap it a little bit.
Do you think they're looking at how the lists are actually doing as well? Because although they're very potent lists, the skill requirement to play the list well doesn't in your average player's hands. It could be a bit hit and miss. So do you think?
Yeah, I think the stat check data does reflect that, but they have a good win rate, and they've been performing very well in the last few months. And Blood Angels, who are much more recent on the radar and don't have as good a win rate, have taken a more substantial hit. So that just feels odd, and I'd agree with Jack on that. It does just feel odd. It feels kind of odd for both Thousand Suns and Grey Knights that they're walking out of this very, very unscathed when they're quite known entities at the moment.
I think the solution there is to take points up on the units that are very high skill sort of floor and reduce them on the ones that have a low skill floor. So your Terminators obviously going down is good. That's the kind of thing that you want to do. But to encourage people to move away from I'm going to do 10,000 rituals and do all this crazy maths in my head and move towards I'm going to shoot you with these Terminators. Bang, bang,
exactly.
Makes it easier to play. But
yeah, for sure. Okay, Tyranids. Quite a lot going on here. So another rise on Gargoyles, then Barb Gaunts down, Swarmlord down, Tyranid Warriors of both varieties down, Tyrant Guard down, and the Psychophage down, Hive Guard down, Zoanthropes down, and the Lictor down. What do we reckon, Jack?
This one's a weird one. The Gargoyle change is warranted, probably not enough. I would probably wanted to see 10 points on those per unit. Maybe even 15 because people are taking a lot of them. But then there's units like they've done the thing which I mentioned before, which is take those aggressively average units, like the Lictor, the Barb Gaunts, and the Tyranid Warriors, and bring them down. The Zoanthropes as well, and bring them down, and they're that kind of that makes them more of a choice, something you would more likely to look at because they're being less outperformed by other options that do similar things. And then there's some weird changes, like your Psychophage going down 30. Is that still something you want to take?
Yeah,
no,
it's
not.
Quite a cheap little monster to have along. If you are skewing into monsters, and it does give a feel no pain to the other ones as well. It is cheap.
Yeah, it is cheap. It's also big, I guess.
Yeah, it's just more monsters to try and fit, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like this opens up any new kind of Nid build. It feels like it's more of the same.
It's just it's some of it looks good. I think it's the right idea. Is just not quite executed perfectly.
Yeah. Next up, we have the World Eaters. You've got drops on Jackals, drops on Khorne Berserkers, and then the obligatory Hellbrute and Mauler Fiend drops, which seems to be universal, and World Eaters Terminators going down as well.
Yeah. This is just copy and paste from CSM.
Pretty much, yeah.
There doesn't allow any actual thought input into this one.
Yeah, and Jackals and Berserkers getting cheap is all well and good. Jackal spam doesn't really exist now. The Demon Prince nerf has happened. And then, cheaper Khorne Berserkers feels okay for a more sort of standoff and tradey 90.5 man units like that.
Yeah, they went down to 90 in the Chaos Space Marine thing as well, so it's just matching that.
It then makes it a discussion point of if you're going to just take lots of 8-bound. Like, if you've got some points to spare, do you just put in some more Berserkers? You've got more units, because that's often a challenge, right? But
I'd say no. I think the 8-bound bring very unique abilities that the Khorne Berserkers don't. An innate scout move, an innate feel no pain to synergize with their blood type thing.
Yeah.
Stuff that Khorne Berserkers.
It's the Berserkers the Berserkers fell out of the lists in recent times, so this is clearly just an attempt to nudge them back in. Whether it does
are just
it,
win counters for the characters that you need for Khan and the
because you can play around Blood Surge quite well, and that becomes less of a thing then, I suppose.
Yeah. Existence UK asks, in general, what are the biggest missed opportunities from this MFN for you guys? I don't personally regard this MFM as a missed opportunity because I don't think the game needed a complete upending, and so it hasn't done that. And I kind of feel broadly okay with it. I think it's always a bit dull for a faction if you get no changes at all. So I feel for anyone who's in that position where you've waited for the slate and then nothing changes. I think it's always nice to tap something, but I think in terms of overall balance, I'm pretty content with it. How about you two?
I think so for me, it looks like it almost seems like there's three different people, three different personalities that work on this. The armies have been divided up, right? So you've got someone working on your Space Marines, your Necrons, your Guard, your Black Templars, those kind of factions. The changes seem really well thought out. They're big enough where they need to be big enough. They're small where they need to be small. They just seem right. And then you have your Aeldari, your Votann, your Admech, where it just seems a bit like haphazard, like they're kind of a bit all over the place. And then you have the third guy who has Chaos Knights and regular Knights.
He went to Bugman's within 10
minutes.
He was on holiday this week, and no one picked up his workload. So
I played 2 games. I won one, I lost the other. I think they're fine.
Yeah. So it's really strange how again some of these changes are just so good. Like I think they're just like really well thought out. And then others are just, we'll just fuck it, let's just go for it. Like, it just seems really strange to me. I think Aeldari, I think was a swing and a miss. T-Sons, I think was a swing and a miss. And I think Sisters with the other one could have got changed a little bit more. I think, and Admech. I think those 4 are probably ones that are not the best. But there's there's an equal number or more that are really good. So,
for sure. It does sound like, with Admech, they're planning to come out swinging with more substantive changes soon, which I think is great. So hopefully maybe it's even a new detachment. Who knows? We'll see. But there'll be some rules changes. MH says, disappointingly short section on Tyranids, lads. I completely agree, MH, but I wouldn't want to take that away from Davey and the Bugwatch boys. So I suspect Bugwatch will cover this in its own right before very long. So don't you worry. You'll get the expert take. I'm not going to patronize you and pretend I know enough about Tyranids to know exactly what this means. But I think it's not radical as far as the changes go. I don't think it massively shifts the faction in terms of the direction it's going to go. That would be my take as an outsider looking in. Then we were down to World Eaters. Are we done now? Or have
That's
we got
it, yeah.
Hey, we've made it. We've absolutely made it. So we are going to disappear in just a moment. But you do have the option, if you want to drop us a question in the chat, we will endeavour to answer any other questions that you have outstanding before we do. So as in the main, has this got either of you guys excited to try anything? Is there anything on your radar off the bat?
It's given me the bits that I was hoping they'd do with Dark Angels, like pulling at some threads now. I'm going to look at kind of those changes like the Terminators. Can I justify squeezing in some normal Terminators? And the answer is probably no, but I'm still going to try. And that's what they want us to do, right? They want us to not just go, here's my list, and just have a shuffle around. Like I've been trying Inner Circle Companions. The fact they're now cheaper makes it more justifiable to take 6 and have a bit of an experiment and get a bit weird. That's nice. Maybe in some actual proper detachments, though.
I'm definitely feeling it's got my interest up for sort of dabbling with my more casual armies. There's a few of the bumps where it's like I can see pissing about with the 10 Scarab Occult Terminators. I can see mucking about with 10 Terminators in CSM. There's a few sort of clunkier fun builds that look a little bit more exciting off the back of this. There's nothing I'm looking at competitively going, oh, there's a massive opportunity here, right? I feel like that's a net positive. You don't want to accidentally unleash a new meta menace. How about you, Jack? Anything exciting here?
I think for what I've been looking at for GSC, you tend to end up with like 400 or 500 points.
Yes.
Well, between 400 and 600 points of just like, what do I take now? I've got all the stuff that I want, and so like that auto includes, and then you have a bunch of stuff that you kind of feel like that you want. And so I think that's the changes that they've made to GSC make you think, oh, well, now I could take something in a truck. Whereas before you were like, well, I don't know if I want to do that. That's really expensive.
Yeah.
You can take 6 dudes in a rock grinder. You can take 10 dudes in a truck and not feel bad about it. So I think that's a really nice change. I think it's going to, I think it's definitely some options for build diversity that opened up in GSC that are really interesting.
Completely. Yeah, I think it's nice not to feel taxed for going in a transport direction, which it really felt like before. It feels like that's just a valid way to go now. And then Thanks Sabotka asks, who do you think is going to be the new big bad in the meta? I mean, my initial take off the back of this is that Necrons remain very strong. And then I think 2 psychic armies that hunt them come out in a very nice spot. I think Grey Knights and Thousand Sons that both have game into Necrons both come out of this still in a very strong spot. That would be my take. And then what I am curious about is if you just take the hit on the points on the nose for the guard car park, is it still really good? I don't know.
I think so.
I think so.
They've taken a lot of points increase to the Kassakin and the Bulgarian as well. If it was just the indirect, then that'd be the case. But yeah, I think you do actually have to consider some build changes now for the guard, which is what you want, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And I think they're probably in that situation now where like a couple of assets lost too early in the game for them or getting pinned a little bit too early really hurts them now because there's just less stuff to dig your way out and play your way out.
I think for me, in terms of, I think obviously you say Grey Knights and Thousand Sons are going to be really good. I think Orks are something that are going to come up and they're just going to catch a lot of people.
Of course,
it'll be me. I'll be that person
excitement.
getting caught out, just getting charged and in combat and wild on, and it's just going to be the worst thing ever. But
I think Orks will be high 50s on arrival, I reckon, as people adapt. That would be my guess.
I think Necrons are going to see a noticeable amount of people just leaving the faction to do something else. But I do think that the changes on them are quite good. So we're going to definitely see some changes to the Necron list. I don't know if that's going to be enough to put them up or down. I think Sisters is still going to be good. And the last one is Eldar. I think Eldar are going to massively benefit from the fact that they have essentially only got upwards changes. Really, I mean, they've got some minor changes. Yeah, but
it definitely enthuses me again as an Aeldari dabbler. Seeing cheap Scorpions, you're like, and cheap Banshees, you're like, oh, that's tasty, right?
They were a top 5-ish faction before.
Yeah.
And a lot of their competitors have been knocked. So I think
it's Guard that was shutting them out above all else, right?
Yeah. So I'm going to say they're a dark horse to sort of bump up a little bit. I don't think they'll be a meta terror, but they'll definitely be quite good, I think.
Yeah. Existence UK says there might be a bit of hobby lag for Orks to really catch on. I would actually agree. I think if you're a meta chaser, this Ork book is financially ruinous. I don't think it's just not one. Like there's like 3 different ways you could build that all involve hundreds of pounds or like very extensive 3D printing. I think it will take a long time. It really was a book for like the collector. And I love that about the Ork book. I think it's really fun that if you're an Ork player, you can literally go to that shelf, pull a completely different set of models off it, play them a completely different way. Well, I say a different way. You're still going to just fucking run at someone because that's what they do. But you can run at them with some different units and do a different thing. Maybe table yourself with dread mobs. Thanks, Garrett Family Aquatics, for the shout out on the Drukhari series. By the way, I'm really loving making it. I was going to do an episode on how this slate affects Drukhari, but basically it's like slightly better. but keep doing what you're doing, basically. I don't think it massively changes things. A little bit of a wind in on a couple of the indirect is great for them, but still not that much of a change.
I don't think the Iron Storm changes are going to be enough to stop people using it.
Yeah, I think Iron Storm's still just going to be blatting people on the tables and then getting done by armies that can jank their way around it, right? That feels like that's where it's at.
It's just enough to make them a little bit worse at scoring points, I think, right? Because there's lists with the word double Storm Raven. Like those lists are going to be like, oh, I've got double Storm Raven, 3 Dreadnoughts and 2 characters, and that's my list. And that becomes quite hard to score stuff on, but
but it might be just dropping it a couple of % on that win rate, and that's maybe all it needed, just to tone it down a little bit.
Yeah, it might cost them like 10 secondary points, 5 primary here and there, and that might be just what all it needs to flip some games.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you reckon? I mean, this meta that's shaping up for new Tau to land in, Jack. How do you feel about that as a Tau player?
Tau are basically the same as they used to be. They've lost the big I pick this unit and it dies. Right? They've lost that bit, but they still have breaches. They still have riptides. They still have ghost kills. If lists go like very elite heavy, or very like trash infantry heavy, then they're going to be pretty happy with that. Stuff like mass 2-up save or mass feel no pain, they don't like.
Yes.
Who bloody knows?
So like an orc horde list.
I was going to say orcs.
They're going to love that, right?
Orcs potentially.
Well, yeah, they're like the boys.
They like the
They're
boys.
like the Meganobs, right?
Yeah.
So.
Existence UK says bets on Tetras getting legended. That would be quite the change.
If that happens, that'll happen in the next couple of days potentially, because the points are dropping with the book.
It's definitely feasible.
I think it's likely because Tetras are out of production. They're not. They don't make Tetras anymore. They've been pulled from the website and all kind of shit, I think. So I do think they're going to get Legend. I don't think that makes a vast difference to the output of Tau, because stealth suits have kind of filled that gap.
Right, okay.
And you can, it kind of works itself out. I don't think it's a massive change in your output.
Okay, that's interesting.
But yeah, it's a weird one. I think Tau lists are going to look very similar regardless if they go Carrion or Montcar. So, because the data sheets that are good regardless of your detachment. It's just which stratagems do you want to use.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Chris Cad says, I feel like they didn't want to rock the boat compared to any of the previous episodes. Yeah, I completely agree. I think they had to be way more ambitious early on than I'm sure they were planning to be, but then they wrote an edition that needed serious surgery, so that's on them. And then we've had a sort of, I guess a parallel would be, we had those spells in 9th edition where it just felt there was tons of different stuff popping up. I'm excited to make State of Play almost weekly because there's so many factions being used and working in so many different ways, and people are genuinely loving playing them, which is always a good sign. It's not like, well, every time I have someone on, we just have to ignore the fact that they auto lose to XYZ, right? It's much more enjoyable right now, and people are having a lot more fun with a lot more diverse armies. So you just don't want to accidentally completely shoot that in the foot, right? So yeah, I agree with that.
It's nice how the metagame will naturally adjust as well. We've already seen that a couple of times.
I agree.
Because we remember back when 2 data slates ago now, or two patches. We'll say patches.
Patches is good.
Ago, 2 patches ago, that the Chaos Space Marines didn't get any changes, but they came out of nowhere for LGT and they just rocked face, right? Same for Sisters. They didn't really get too many changes. They kind of have risen up. So the sort of natural adjustment of players in the metagame is solid. So we like to see that. The fact there is small changes encourages that natural adjustment. So even if there are very minor changes to a faction, you still have that psychological effect of, well, I don't want to use this unit because it's got more expensive. And so it encourages you to innovate with something else. So I think the metagame is definitely going to change up at least a bit. For most factions.
And I think having faith in the game's ability to adapt when it's in this current state is very reasonable, because I think it adapted fairly happily to Custodes in the end. It worked it out and it got around it. They didn't become the complete dominant force in the game. It adapted to Necrons to a considerable extent. I do think some armies just couldn't, but also there's a rock, paper, scissors dimension to that, and that's part of the role that they play. And I'm pretty optimistic that both Tau and Orks are books that enough of the meta can adapt to and deal with that they're not going to be miserable.
I think the rock paper scissors stalemate of the current meta has been broken, and things might get a bit weird now.
It's going to be weird for a few weeks. There's opportunity in that. This is the time to do something interesting and get out there and get stuck in. I always enjoy this kind of aftermath. ITT should also be interesting, because I just don't think people will have an exact fix on how a 5 shakes out. I think that's really nice and healthy as well.
It's me a headache just thinking about it.
Yeah, I'm just not gonna. I'm just gonna go in and tell Chris to protect me for 5 rounds. That's fine. It's nice to see so much Tyranids love in the chat, by the way, guys. I know Davey's cultivated a real following there, so it's lovely to have you all here. I'm sorry that we can't go as in depth on Tyranids as you guys deserve, but I think Tyranids have got more going on sometimes than meets the eye. I think obviously statistically they are a little bit struggling, so we just need to see whether this helps or this adjusts it. And Dancer Box says, appreciate you guys having a late bedtime on a school night, being a good watch. Hey, it's you guys. It's amazing that this many people turn up at this time and support us. We love chatting Warhammer. We were excited to do the slate. So thank you so much for listening to us, guys. It's been really good. Do hit the old like, subscribe, leave the comments, let us know anything we missed, anything you're excited about, anything you want to try, do leave us in the comments. It all helps the algorithm. And as I say, we want to take over the entire world, so without your help, we can't do it. I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your night for what's left of it, and we'll see you out there in the new Dataslate world. We'll be back on next week, and obviously we'll do the results from Pin the Win Rate on the faction, because obviously the quarter's over now. Let's see how accurate we were. I've got a good feeling about mine. I feel like I did well this time. Did Chris do well? Who knows? We'll try and get Thierry on as well. Chris Cad says Davey's just going to have a whole show of crying. Yeah. Is that not all his shows? I don't actually watch them as much as I should.
It's JP cuddling him, going, "It's okay."
Yeah. I think he's got a big brother, little brother thing going on with JP. By the way, Nids players, I played JP today with my Drukhari, and JP soundly beat me. We had a great game, so don't worry. The future's fine for Nids. Just take tons of monsters and run at me. You'll be okay. Wonderful. All right, guys, we will let you go. We have been the Blues as always. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.